Cafe. Anyway.
Mike's Daily Podcast.
Episode 1421-1421. Hello, I am Mike Matthews, broadcasting from Cafe Anyway, located somewhere in Podcastro Valley. Ton today, not Mont, but ton. It's Mike. The last place on earth in Cafe Anyway, and today we hear from Chely Shoehart, Floyd the Floorman, John Deere the engineer. We get to a segment called This Is Interesting.
Mike's Daily Podcast.
Interesting songs for today's show. And now I will sing
Mike's Daily Podcast.
There are lots of people that are gonna watch HBO tonight. I guess I'm not sure. I'm not a fan, alright, because I think HBO programs are designed for frat boys. They make them happy and they make a lot of noise. And so frat boys will watch it and then their wives will watch with them.
Mike's Daily Podcast.
Because frat boys control their wives. They're controlling. This is all researched and
Mike's
proven out. So
Daily
I have the facts and figures here.
Podcast.
Right here. See?
Yeah.
All these papers prove my point. So what happens is, this is the business model of HBO. People that are frat boys love HBO. And so they get hooked on The Sopranos, Game of Thrones, all the other shows. Look who walked in. And they then tell their wives, I'm going to watch this tonight. And they're like, okay, dear, I'll watch with you. Okay, so this happens. And then the women go, hey, that show is actually pretty good. And they tell their female friends, and that spreads on. And then they're like, but other people walk in while I'm trying to talk. And then they tell their husbands, etc. And that's how it grows and grows and grows. And it's just edgy enough. The HBO shows are a little bit edgy with the bad language and the nudity and the hardcore violence.
And here's today's podcast picture.
It's someplace in Germany. And then what ends up happening is it spreads and people go, oh, Game of Thrones, you're going to watch Game of Thrones? And then you got Lulu Garcia Navarro, who used to be called Lourdes, who's on NPR's Sunday morning show, the whatever morning edition show, saying, oh my gosh, I love Game of Thrones. It's the best show ever. She says that on the live NPR nation to side, one side of the nation to the other show. And so she is espousing how great it is, and then everybody has to watch it with their espouses. The end. And that's how I see it.
Something must be wrong with you.
Yes, thank you. I might be wrong. I might be 100% wrong. I don't know.
Sometimes you wear stretchy pants.
All I know is that this theory popped into my head today as I was walking Basil the Boxer. And I just thought I would share it with you. So tomorrow, Bonnie Tyler is going to come over to your house and sing, I need you now, tonight, and I need you more than ever, and I'll only be making it right. Together we belong, together we can take it to the end of the line. My love is like a powder keg, it's all of the time. I don't know where to go and I'm always in the dark. Giving off sparks, I really need you tonight. Forever's gonna start tonight. Forever's gonna... God, it takes forever to get to the hook of the song. Once upon a time, I was falling in love. Now I'm only love in the dark. Nothing I could say. A total eclipse of the sun. Thank you. It'll be a total eclipse of the sun now. My suggestion to you is, if you're not in the zone of totality... Well, even if you are, do not look directly into the sun. You will be blind. I don't like that. I don't want you to be blinded, my friend. I want you to be able to see this. Wait a minute. I guess you don't need your eyes in order to... You need your eyes in order to see the podcast picture, which today is of Germany. It's in a place in Germany called Hamburg, where the girl that you hear at the beginning of every show, Ann-Katrine, saying, Mike's Daily Podcast, she... lives there, and this is when I was there visiting her back almost 10 years ago, somewhere maybe around 8, and I went to visit her, and there's this cool, it's got this Well, a lot of cargo ships go there because they have access to the ocean, and then they cross the ocean and bring us those cargoes. And for a long time, they were bringing us their immigrants as well. And in fact, there's an immigrant museum there in Hamburg. But so it's got a big harbor, and that's a picture of the harbor and one of the cool boats on it. And it was just such a... I was only there like 3 days, and I had the best time there with my then wife and with my mom. By the way, I'm finally going to see my mom. I finally bought tickets for Florida. I had hemmed and hawed about it, and I did a little bit of hurrying and hawing and hee-hawing, and I finally said, I gotta go. I gotta go to see my mom. And my roommate was cool with watching my dog, Basil the Boxer. So all is going to be well. And I will be actually off for a whole week, not doing new shows. But that's not for about 26 days from now. So don't worry, don't fret. All will be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well, and I will continue podcasting to you. But if you'd like to say, hey, Mike, I enjoy your podcast, which nobody does... Not that I'm complaining or I am bitter about this, but if you'd like to drop a line and say, hey, Mike, I enjoy the show, please email me, mikesdailypodcast@gmail.com, or you can call me 336-MM-DAILY, 336-MM-DAILY. That's like 3 + 3 = 6, MM-DAILY, as in my name is Mike Matthews, and those are the 2 M's. And tell me what you think of the show. I would love to hear from you, good or bad. Well, wait a minute. We did hear from someone. Why don't we get to the segment called...
Oh, my God!
Email for email. And your calm and not so calm mess.
First off, I've been getting a lot of emails from Brian, who I met back when I was doing my country show on Country Crossroads Radio. Hi, Mike. Just thought I'd say hi. How's your day going today? He said. And then he also said to me, hi, Mike. Hope you're having a good He's not the best writer in the world. He didn't even say what the good was. Hope you're having a good what? He didn't say. He just hope you're having a good. Just thought I say hi. Just relaxing, listening to some CDs. Did you ever hear, and that's here as in come here, George Jones and Tammy Wynette sing a song called It Slash? Honest to God, I think this guy isn't even real. I think he's a bot. Don't think that with the way he talks. Don't think he's real. But anyway, thank you, Brian. And no, I hadn't. But I did hear from Bob, and he's a real person. And Bob is the guy that I ran into several times as I walked my dog, Basil the Boxer, around Cull Canyon Lake in Podcastro Valley. And he wrote to me the following, which really pertains to what I was talking about with the eclipse. Which, by the way, if you are going to watch the eclipse, get a colander. Yes, the thing that has all the little holes in it that you use to strain spaghetti. Get one of those. I already have mine in the car for tomorrow at 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. I'm going to take the colander, they say to do this, and hold it over your head, find a shadow, get the shadow of the colander, put it on your head, run around going, I love eclipses! And then people will go, what the, who, huh? Who's that guy? No, don't put it on your head, just put it over your head, or just show it, hold it in such a way that you can see the shadow is the point. And the little holes, because inside the little holes, you will see the eclipse. And here in the Bay Area, it's only going to be partial, but they say like up to 75% of the sun will be blocked. Do not look into the sun. You will get blinded. And I want you to be able to see the podcast picture, which I mentioned earlier was from Hamburg, Germany, where I had a wonderful time. And I hope someday to go back. But first, I got to visit my mom in Florida. Bob wrote the following. Hey, dude. That was a D and a D, but in the middle of the D and the D was a very long palindrome with several O's involved. And it said, here's one for your show. Bob decided to pull a harebrained idea, and I am up near Bend, Oregon with my son. I didn't even know he had a son. We never talked about his son. We've talked about how he used to be in a band, how he knew Bob Seger and all this stuff, but I didn't know he had a son. His birthday is August 22nd. Well, happy birthday out to the son of his, who will be having a birthday on Tuesday, the day after the eclipse. We are going to attempt to get into the total solar eclipse zone Monday morning. We are camoing about 25 minutes south of Bend. Oh, that might be camping. But he was one letter off. Camping about 25 minutes south of Bend. But hearing stories and reading news reports of over 1 million people expected visit the total zone, he wrote. Gas stations are, as in what a pirate would say, are already out of gas, and I am going into Bend today to see if there is any food left on the shelves. The Oregonian posted an article on what roads to avoid, and there are highway alerts that you cannot park on the highway. I'm getting a wee bit nervous about this whole thing. Came up from Klamath Falls yesterday, and there is not one gas station between Klamath and Chemult, or where we are staying in this. Parentheses, I don't even want to say how unclean and run down motel. Oh, where we are staying in this motel that apparently is unclean and run down. Yikes. Crater Lake has fires and smoke everywhere on Highway 97. Please send the rescue helicopter for Bob and Joe with plenty of shrimp scampi, lobster thermidor, and filet mignon. Or as the British say, filet mignon. If we evaporate under the total eclipse, I want my last meal to be a good one. If no helicopter, then good vibes will suffice. And Lees, that must be please. And please say hi to Basil for us. Bob, exclamation point. Thank you, Bob, exclamation point. And I wrote back, great to hear from you. That's great. You're in the zone of totality. I envy you, but not for all the crazy gas and store situations you're experiencing. I will send good vibes and shout out over the podcast on my Sunday show. If you have time and want to do a call in to the podcast, let me know. You could give us the reporter's eye view of the situation. But I think he pretty much did, didn't he? And I haven't heard from him today. But thank you, Bob. That was awesome. It added a lot to today's show, which was so far running into the crap zone. It wasn't doing very well. And then Bob saved us. Thank you, Bob. Hey, a couple characters walked in. Did you notice? I heard the door open and slam shut several times. Let's see who's here.
Hello, my God, this is Chely Shoehart, gift shop supervisor. Oh my God, you were talking forever.
Sorry, Chely.
It's okay. I love Game of Thrones. It's a great show.
All right, but do you agree with me with the frat boy theory that I have for HBO?
No.
All right, look who else is here. Oh my God, it's Floyd the Floorman! And this is John Deere, the engineer. Jesus Christ, my friend Floyd is really loud, isn't he? Mm-hmm. Yes, he is, but we love him. I love him loads, Mike. You love him loads? That's great. Yes, I love him loads. Doctor Who. Ah, thank you for saying Doctor Who. John Deere, the engineer. In fact, by the way, John Deere tractors are doing very well, if you didn't know. Yeah, I don't care about John Deere tractors. I am not named after them. My last name is Deere. My first name is John, and I'm an engineer. All right, I got some of that, but hey, C-SPAN was showing, and I've been there before, the computer museum in Mountain View. It is so cool. I got to go back. I went with this guy who couldn't give a crap, and he was like, let's go. I'm tired. I'm bored. Let's leave. And I'm like, shut up. I want to see the damn museum. But there's so much there to see, including Google's first database setup was about as big as your closet. And they set it up. They made it all themselves using just crap they bought out of like Radio Shack. And it is amazing to see what was the beginnings of Google. And of course, the personal computers and how, Steve Jobs once said that Bill Gates stole his idea, that Bill Gates had stole Steve Jobs' idea for the personal computer. And Bill Gates said, no, Steve Jobs and I both stole the idea for the personal computer, what would become our basis for the computers that we would end up creating from Xerox. So we have Xerox to thank for the personal computer and that small little computer that you're holding in your hand right now. Or perhaps you have sit by you, or maybe you're going to look at sometime. I don't know if you're listening to me through that, whatever. But thank you to both those guys, because podcasting would not have been possible without them. And thank you to Xerox, I guess. And for giving us a verb. Xerox infiltrated our whole language, because whenever you make a copy of a piece of paper, you go, hey, I'll Xerox you a copy. They got their name brand into a verb. And it's amazing. But that's neither here nor there or over there, or what's the hell is that? Doctor Who with Peter Capaldi. Peter Capaldi's run on Doctor Who is one more episode with Peter Capaldi. That's the Christmas episode, and then he'll be gone. The new Doctor is a woman who I mentioned earlier on this show about a month ago when they announced it. I forget her name at the moment, but she's beautiful, and she's going to be great. And the show, finally, Stephen Moffat is leaving, and I couldn't be happier. I've talked about Stephen Moffat before. Haley, who has been on the show several times, as you know, Haley turned me on to the fact of how bad Stephen Moffat was, and I agree. After watching every single Doctor Who that's ever been made, except for the ones from the 60s through the 80s, I have not seen every one of those yet. Those are hard to watch because the dialogue is written by these frustrated Oxford students, these British wannabes. They're all Shakespeare wannabes is what they are. And they're trying to write this really amazing dialogue that you would hear on the Shakespeare stage. And it doesn't work with sci-fi. It just is bad. Some people love that. And after about 10 minutes of it, I can't take it anymore. But the new Doctor Who, the last 2 episodes where they wrapped up the whole storyline of Bill Potts, the female companion to the Doctor, the young lady. This woman has the most expressive face. Bill Potts, I forget the actress that plays her, but she's just amazing. And they tend to get, like Billie Piper had this really expressive face. The actress that plays Bill Potts, I don't know if there was some reason why wow, maybe that was a homage to Billie Piper, because she was the first companion of the Doctor when they brought the show back on in 2005. It had been off the air for like 20 years until that point. So her character, Bill Potts, spoilers, dies, or sort of dies. But she lives on in this new way that you'll find out if you watch it, or if you've already seen it, you know what I'm talking about. But, you know, Stephen Moffat loves to give you, everything seems to be written, like it's like what he does is he takes a bunch of pieces of paper and he goes, what can I do that will just visually knock the socks off the watcher of this show? I want to totally just make their eyes just collapse upon themselves. I want to knock their socks off. What do I do? So he'll write down a couple of things. Like he probably wrote down a spaceship being sucked into a black hole, but it's not, because it's staying just outside of the black hole. And then he wrote down a huge spaceship smashing through the ground, and a Cyberman carrying the Doctor out. Writes these things, and then he connects the dots, but it doesn't always work. So I don't know. It was visually amazing to watch, but then afterwards I was sitting there kind of thinking of all the threads that weren't quite tied nicely, and how he was just trying to get from point A to point B, and I don't think he checked off all the boxes he was supposed to. Not without giving you the complete detail of what happened in the last 2 episodes. But at any rate, Bill Potts is gone. And the master, who became the mistress, So the Master, a male character, became a female character on the show already before the Doctor is going to turn into a woman. Now, but the Master and Mistress have supposedly died, so they're gone, and now the Doctor is in the process of dying. So we'll see what happens. Woohoo! And Stephen Moffat will be gone, and no more crappy Doctor Who. Or just no more. It's nice to put him to rest. He was doing it for a long time, almost 10 years. He did do it for 10 years, so it's been a long time, and he'll be finally done with it. Well, that's a lot of here and there and that and whatever, and I hope you enjoyed it so far here on Mike's Daily Podcast. 20 minutes in, we're going to jump to the news, but MIKEs-DAILY-PODCAST.com is a fantastic place where you can listen to past shows. I don't think I wanted that verb. I was saying the letter P for podcast. Okay, that's what I was doing. And all the past shows, past podcast pictures, a lot of P's there. And the Amazon link. If you want to buy anything on Amazon, click on that Amazon link, buy whatever it is you're going to buy, and that will help us out. There's also a link to PayPal. I'm getting a little stuck, as you can tell. But if you'd like to help us out that way through the PayPal, that would be great. Or whatever. Listen to Mike's Daily Podcast through MIKEs-DAILY-PODCAST.com. And now the segment.
This is interesting.
Wow, this is interesting.
It certainly is. Well, let's begin with White House officials were notably absent from the morning news show lineups today, as President Trump capped off a turbulent week in his presidency. Chuck Todd said, "To give you a sense of how reluctant Republicans are to talk about President Trump this week, not one member of the current Republican leadership in Congress agreed to come on the broadcast this morning," he said on Meet the Press. In fact, even the White House was unable, or perhaps unwilling to provide a guest, right down to the White House press secretary. That, never happens. Everybody's always clamoring to get on those shows, to get to the massive audiences those shows have. ABC's Martha Raddatz, who filled in for George Stephanopoulos on This Week, said that the White House had similarly declined to provide an official to appear on that show. Instead, she said the White House referred the show to Jerry Falwell Jr., the president of Liberty University and an ardent Trump ally outside the White House. When we asked the White House for an official who could appear on this program today to speak on behalf of the president, they pointed us to our next guest, and then she introduced Falwell. Boy, that's desperate. Trump has faced a week of near constant tumult that began last weekend when he came under fire for his equivocal comments on the violence in Charlottesville, Virginia. Now, Breitbart News, the media outlet helmed by President Trump's former chief strategist Stephen Bannon, who just left the White House, published an article today casting National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster as soft on Islamist extremism and terrorism. Bannon's tenure in the White House was often turbulent, and he is said to have frequently feuded with the president's other aides, including McMaster, in fact, McMaster in particular. The former chief strategist's exit from the White House Friday immediately raised questions about the future of Bannon's relationship with Trump, as well as how Breitbart would cover the administration with Bannon at the helm again. McMaster, by the way, was under target. This was revealed on that NPR show I mentioned earlier with Lulu Garcia Navarro about Twitter. Was the Russians apparently got into Twitter, or somehow finagled Twitter's algorithms, and made the hashtag Fire McMaster trend, to the point that it was in the top of the trending topics of Fire McMaster. So the Russians want McMaster fired, as well as the alt-right, which, well, I know that's kind of crazy and makes you wonder about what Trump said about the Russians.
I say it's better to get along with Russia than not.
No puppet. No puppet.
And it's pretty clear.
You're the puppet.
And if you're alt-right, does that mean that you're into the Russians, are you a pinko commie? It's an interesting question. But Kid Rock, don't know if he is, I don't think he's a commie, but he calls himself the pimp of the nation and peppers his lyrics and political rhetoric with unprintable language. Now, a Senate candidate, though, is what he wants to be. The rocker's popularity ratings aren't dramatically different from other more traditional politicians in his home state of Michigan. A recent poll from NBC News said that 36% of registered voters in Michigan have favorable opinions of Kid Rock. His real name, by the way, is Robert Ritchie. That compared to 34% who have an unfavorable opinion about him and another 30% who aren't sure. In a mid-July tweet, Ritchie announced that he was considering a run for the Senate and verified that KidRockForSenate.com was a legit website, but many observers remain skeptical that he will actually run. Still, some Republican groups are carefully considering whether Kid Rock could harness anti-establishment sentiment to unseat Democrat Senator Debbie Stabenow. And now you see sort of a thing that, like what happened with Trump, beginning yet again. Back to Bob over in Oregon. Evacuation orders affecting hundreds of people were issued in California and Oregon as wildfires neared small towns, including one that it's a prime location for viewing the eclipse. About 600 residents were told to leave the tourist town of Sisters, Oregon. And authorities said Saturday another 1,000 people have been told to get ready to leave if necessary. Sisters is located on the edge of a 70-mile swath of the state where the moon will be completely blocked by the sun. No structures had been lost. So this is what's going on up there north of us here in the Bay Area. Now, speaking of the eclipse, there are a lot of superstitions about eclipses. There's also a lot of weird things that happen during an eclipse that are completely real. Here are 6 incredible things to look for, according to CNET. Tomorrow, during the eclipse, animals get confused. A total eclipse is 10,000 times fainter than one that is 99% covered by the moon. A totally eclipsed sun, says an astrophysicist and professor at the Lawrence University. The change in light during an eclipse makes the temperature drop suddenly, and it makes animals think that night is coming. As a total eclipse begins, animals begin their evening songs and behavior. Crickets begin chirping. At the eclipse end, the animals think that morning is coming. You'll be able to hear roosters crowing. Stars and planets in the middle of the day, that's what you'll be able to see during a total eclipse. You might be able to see Jupiter and Venus very clearly. Shadow bands. Right before a total eclipse, little snake-like shadows will appear to slither across the ground. Scientists aren't completely sure why these shadow bands happen. Many scientists believe they are caused by light from the eclipse being focused and refocused through cells of air in the atmosphere. Shadow bands are a rare sight during the eclipse, but you may be able to see them with the right equipment, timing, and location. The most important part is the color of the ground. You can see the bands best on light colors. Some people lay a large white sheet on the ground. You may also spot them by looking at concrete, snow, or ice. In 2015, Mark Bender said he's a longtime eclipse chaser, and I was standing on a landscape covered with ice, just an enormous white sheet, and there they were. It's all about being at the right place at the right time, he said. Bailey's beads are pearls of sunlight shining through the valleys and mountains of the moon. You'll see them around the edges of the moon as it passes in front of the sun. The beads may look reddish in color, exposing the upper atmosphere of the sun. That's called the sphere of color. There are corona rainbows that happen when the air is full of water molecules. During the eclipse, it was this in Cornwall, England, when they were having theirs in 1999. It was completely overcast and rainy. 3 minutes before totality, the sun started to peek through, and with 1 minute to go, clouds dissipated. The entire sky opened up. Even though the rain had stopped, there was still so much water vapor in the air. When the sun eclipsed, the corona was full of tiny rainbows. The corona was full of color. And finally, there will be a 360-degree sunset. During totality, or when the sun is completely covered by the moon, you can see what looks like a sunset in every direction around the horizon. The sun is still shining outside the path of totality, so that's what it's a 360-degree phenomenon. Birds stop chirping. It'll be cool. As we go outside a cafe anyway, we're bringing you Mike's Daily Podcast somewhere in Podcaster Valley. Hey, before we wrap up the show, in The Incredibles, there was a memorable moment that seemed wildly futuristic at the time. Mr. Incredible picks up a wafer-thin tablet computer and it scans his face to verify his identity before divulging his secret mission. 13 years later, many slim phones and tablets unlock with the press of a thumb, and just this sort of mobile facial scanning is on the way, according to the Wall Street Journal. This is going to be using our faces to unlock things could soon become routine. Qualcomm, the industry leader in mobile device chips, recently introduced its Spectra imaging system, which can extract depth information from objects, including faces. The company plans to include the technology in its forthcoming generation of its flagship Snapdragon mobile processors. Meanwhile, when firmware for Apple's upcoming HomePod speaker leaked online, developers spotted clues suggesting that an upcoming iPhone might have similar depth perception and facial recognition. The technology is different from, but related to, the facial recognition increasingly built into security cameras around the world, which cross-reference pictures of your face against databases of millions. The tech is growing in capability and in use, especially in China, where its applications range from surveillance to payments. Hey, next show, I'm going to have Benita, the Disgruntled Fiddle Player, and the Brewmaster. It'll be a much faster show because I have very limited time during the weekdays to do the show, but it'll still be fun. I hope we covered a lot. I hope if you're an HBO fan, I didn't offend you too much. I hope if you're a Doctor Who fan, I didn't offend you too much. I hope if you're an Eclipse fan, I didn't offend you too much. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you for listening. You're awesome.
Mike's Daily Podcast is written and produced and performed by Mike Matthews. His podcast is super easy to find. Download or listen to his show and read his blog at MIKEs-DAILY-PODCAST.com. Email Mike now at MIKES-DAILY-PODCAST@gmail.com. See you tomorrow. Bye.
Oh, yeah, and if you're a Bonnie Tyler fan, I'm really sorry.